Welcome to the Madison Miller podcast. Today is Thursday, March 12th, 2020. I am sitting here in a conference room in a hotel in Tampa, Florida. Unfortunately, we had news last night that the NBA season has been suspended after Rudy Gobert had tested positive for the coronavirus. And then this morning, college basketball followed suit and canceled the rest of its conference tournaments one by one. The NHL followed suit and put their season on pause. Then Major League Baseball followed suit and delayed the start of their season and canceled the remainder of spring training games. And then it came out most recently that the men's and women's NCAA basketball tournaments have been canceled. So that's a lot to uncover. We'll start at the NBA because that's where it started. It's just unfortunate. Rudy Gobert started the whole thing. He obviously had that press conference where he was joking around and touching the microphones. And then ultimately, he didn't feel good and he tested positive. And that led to the NBA suspending their season for right now. And it also had a big time ripple effect on everything else going on in the sports world as well. It's really sad. I think that the NBA will resume its season at some point. They sent out a release saying that it's going to give them 30 days to determine what's next. So maybe they will restart on April 15th, approximately, or sometime after. Maybe they'll complete the regular season and go with the playoffs. And what would be interesting here, so we could end up seeing the NBA playoffs being played in the summer rather than in the spring, and same for the Stanley Cup playoffs, because there seemed for certain that they were going to resume their season, and they put that they would love the crown of Stanley Cup champions. So you know that the NHL won't outright cancel. I don't think the NBA will either. College basketball obviously did outright cancel the NCAA tournament. They also canceled the College World Series for both the men's and the women's too, which is unfortunate for both athletes, sports, and basketball and baseball. And what also this affects is the MLB draft, the NBA draft, and even the WNBA draft. I feel like all those drafts are affected, and obviously all those drafts will be moved. Another league that hasn't spoke up yet has been the WNBA. Well, their season doesn't really start until mid-May, so they have some time to figure something out. Meanwhile, all the pressure is on the National Hockey League and Major League Baseball, and to some extent the NFL, after the NBA put its season on suspension, and then the NFL went out and canceled the owners' meetings that take place in April. But they do expect free agency to start on time next week. So if that resumes, then that is pretty good, at least for sports fans, so they have something to follow, and I have something to talk about on my podcast. But yeah, it's just an unfortunate situation, and I obviously feel bad for the college players in both basketball and baseball, and they don't get to compete for what they ultimately want, is that national championship. And there's so many teams that had what I like to call career years for individuals, but like I guess team career or team best years, like San Diego State and Dayton. Like, I feel sorry for those schools. Like, neither of those schools are going to be as dominant as they were this season. Malachi Flynn and Obi Toppin are going to be in the NBA in a year from now, in all likelihood. So it's just really unfortunate for these college players, especially the seniors, especially the ones that are declaring for the draft. And then baseball, there's a report out that they're delaying opening day 2 weeks, and it was supposed to start March 26th. 2 weeks from March 26th would bring us to April 9th, which is a Thursday. And that won't be that terrible. It'll be probably like the standalone unless of the NHL or the NBA resume play by then, which isn't inconceivable, especially for the NHL, because the rumor on the street for the NHL could be 4 weeks, and in the NBA could be 30 days, which is a little over 4 weeks, pretty much a month. Yeah, really crazy. Imagine just the summer if the NBA season, say, is suspended for like 60 days, and then it's back in May, and then like the NBA playoffs, if they finish the regular season through like Memorial Day, and then the NBA playoffs will be June, and then into mid-July, competing with Major League Baseball in the regular season, and the Stanley Cup playoffs could be at that time too, unless they decide to go earlier and do May and June. Another thing that is affected by this, or could be, is the NFL draft. Las Vegas is the home of the draft. Nothing's been said about the NFL draft yet. I wonder if they're going to do like a conference call and just cancel like the event in terms of fan viewership, or like do what Major League Baseball does and does that little conference call thing that baseball does in their later rounds of the draft. A lot of concerts, a lot of gatherings have been canceled as well. And what's ironic about the rescheduling of the NBA and the NHL for the summer is that all these arenas have possibly concerts booked and other events booked that they may have to move potentially due to book playoff games. Like, for example, the TD Garden. You're going to have the Celtics and the Bruins both in the playoffs. And like they're going to have to move a lot of concerts around to get these playoff games in for the Bruins and the Celtics. The Scotiabank Arena could be affected, even though that's Canada, Toronto. MSG, if the Rangers make the playoffs, the Knicks aren't going to make it. United Center, neither the Blackhawks or the Bulls are good. Staples Center will be greatly affected because it's Lakers and Clippers. That's two teams right there. Bankers Life Fieldhouse in Indianapolis has the Pacers. And there's a lot of ones I can come up with. Nassau Coliseum has the Islanders. And even for those last couple regular season games, too, it could be affected from a scheduling standpoint as well. So there's just a lot of ripple effect from this, obviously. And it's an unfortunate situation. And if you ask me for a prediction right now on how this plays out, is I think that the first sport to return to action will be Major League Baseball, and I think that will be back mid-April. And then hockey, I'm going to project end April, and I think NBA will be back in mid-May. That would be my prediction. And then Major League Baseball just has a shortened season rather than extend it and make the playoffs into November. So that's what I think baseball will do. In terms of basketball and hockey extending their seasons into the summer, I just think that their off season is going to be shortened, or that they will reduce the number of games for them next season and start a month or so late. Like hockey would start in November of 2020, and the NBA would start in either early December or late November of 2020. So I could see that potentially playing out. But I don't see any cancellations between the four professional sports like we did with college basketball, because these players are paid and they're going to want their paychecks. So I think that those sports will eventually continue on at some point in the future. I want to go over now what's next for this show, the Madison Miller podcast. I'm going to have a podcast tomorrow just to talk more about the ramifications of this, or if any other news regarding the coronavirus breaks, then I'll discuss it. But starting next week, while sports are on hiatus, I'm going to be doing 3 shows a week on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. I'm going to be doing a lot of pop culture content. I'm going to be doing some more fun things. I might throw a little sports in there. If there's any sports news, I'll discuss it on the show. But I want to do some opinionated things a little bit in terms of fun opinionated, like top 10 lists or top X number lists of, for example, NBA games of the 2000s or something like that. And I want to do it like NCAA tournament bracket style, and do, in terms of sports, do it for each season. And then I would do the same thing for movies. I'll do it each calendar year, and same for songs. And maybe even for television shows, I'll probably just do it for the decades, because TV shows are more of like a decade success thing, and movies, it's more of like although it has success no matter like how long for period, but like the years they came out for movies. And then TV shows, I would do like decades, like what shows came out in what decade and whatnot. So that'd be something fun that I have to get going on. In terms of guests on the show, once sports returns, I'll certainly have more guests on. If there's a certain top thing list that I want to do and I want to have a guest on to judge my list, maybe I'll get a guest on to judge the list. Could be anybody really as a guest. Could be one of my regulars that you've seen on this show before, like a Derek or a James, or maybe even a Jeff Burns. But it could be somebody new that I never had on before that could help me out here. So I'll still have guests on every once in a while, but not as often as I did. But ultimately, when sports comes back, the guests will be back. And I'm sure when all the sports are back, then I'm going to have a majority of guests on to talk about everything and the cancellations and the what's next and whatnot. So that's that. Also, in terms of the show, obviously no more best bets until sports are back. That's obviously super unfortunate, because I had fun doing that segment, betting whether it was college basketball, NBA, NHL, Major League Baseball, NFL, college football. And by the way, college football canceled a couple spring games. Schools have canceled a couple of their spring games. I think college football will start on time, so the NFL. The XFL is another sport I didn't mention earlier. I think they're eventually going to postpone their season as well. I think they're next on the clock. The PGA Tour is still going on as scheduled, but without fans. And same for the NASCAR race this weekend at Homestead, Miami. So I'll have winners for you for both the golf and NASCAR for a weekend on tomorrow's podcast. Initially, there was a report that NASCAR was going to be postponed, but it turned out to be fake news, and the NASCAR came out with a statement saying that they're going to race in front of no fans for the next 2 weeks at Homestead, Miami, and then after that at Atlanta. So that's that for NASCAR and golf. And now I want to talk about last night's things. And last night's things, I mean 2 reality TV shows that are on Wednesday nights at Fox. And I'm going to start with The Masked Singer. I think the most surprising reveal of all time in the short history of the show, which was the bear. She was tall. She talked about Home Sweet Home. There's a lot of old school clues in here. There's a calendar that said October, that said Saturday night on there. She talked about cubs, so it's obvious that she had kids. I thought it was Candace Cameron of Full House, due to the fact that there is a full house of cards, and there was some other hints that made me think it was Candace Cameron about kids, because I know she has kids, and she's somebody that has a little bit of a personality. Ken Jeong guessed Tanya Harding. Jenny McCarthy guessed Candace Cameron. Actually, no, Ken Jeong actually guessed Jodie Sweetin on the final guess. His first guess was Tanya Harding. Robin Thicke thought it was Tina Fey. Nicole Scherzinger thought it was Christina Applegate, which I don't think was a bad guess. And another possibility, I thought this was the lead singer of that old band Popula Demand. I am blanking on her name, but if I think of it, I'll say it. But it ended up being Sarah Palin, who obviously is somebody that is very involved in the politics world. She ran for vice president when John McCain went up against Barack Obama in 2008. And at the same time, this makes sense because she has a lot of kids. And that's what she meant by Full House and Cubs. And then the Saturday night hint on Saturday Night Live was because she, somebody did an impersonation of her on Saturday Night Live. And it was just an absolute stunner. I've never seen Nick Cannon so stunned about a revealing of a mask. And it's funny because it actually did look like Tina Fey for a second. And then she turns her head and we're all just flabbergasted that it was Sarah Palin. Like, who would have ever thought that? I mean, if she went longer, I feel like that more people would have started to speculate her. And if she obviously dropped a hint of something red or the White House, maybe somebody would have thought Sarah Palin, but she didn't go there and she threw everybody off. So good on Sarah Palin. So the other contestants from Group C, the Night Angel, I thought was awesome. I thought she was the best performer. She had a clue about night vision, a motel, a key with the number 2 on it. She said something about my prerogative, which I thought was weird. That had me thinking Britney Spears at first, and I'm like, no, that's not Britney's voice. And then based on the voice, Christina Aguilera, to me, that's who it sounded like. It was a beautiful voice. Somebody that has been through some stuff in her life. She really hasn't been around much other than the voice. So you never know. And then Robin Thicke thought it was Taylor Dayne. Nicole Scherzinger thought it was Lil' Kim, which I thought was interesting. And then Jenny McCarthy thought it was Monica. And then the astronaut was somebody that was talking about reaching for the stars, someone who started young. There was a lot of driving. There was some tools in there. There was a broom, which was weird. And Nicole Scherzinger throughout the guess of Zac Efron, I agree with her. It sounded a lot like Zac Efron. And the dreaming of flying high makes me think it was Zac Efron because there's a song in High School Musical where Zac sang "Soarin' Flyin'," and that what I think could be a reference to. Ken Jeong thought it was either Adam Levine or Josh Hutcherson. So I think astronaut's very interesting. T-Rex was wild. She's somebody that I think is very young. She's somebody that was in a group. There was a compass in there that I thought was interesting. She's fierce and untamed. There was a hint about a baby in there, which I thought was weird. The baby hint made me think that she's young compared to everybody else. And my guess for this was former Dance Moms star Nia Fraser, who was one of the dancers on the show Dance Moms. Her mom was Holly. Nia, I thought, was an underrated dancer on that show. Obviously, the big star of that show is Maddie Ziegler, who Jenny McCarthy threw out as her guest, which I thought was very interesting. And I thought Nia and she guessed Maddie. So that would be kind of funny if somebody from that show is on Masked Singer. And those girls on Dance Moms, a lot of them are stars now. Maddie is an actress. Nia does some acting too and some modeling. Chloe Lukasiak is a model. Brooke Highland is into music. Mackenzie Ziegler is into music and acting. Obviously, JoJo Siwa was a star on Dance Moms for a couple of years. She's touring and singing, and she's met literally every famous person you can imagine. Kendall Vertez obviously was a dancer on that show, and so was Paige Hyland. But I really don't know if they're really up to anything special or as big as what Maddie or any of the other girls are doing right now. So I think that T-Rex is Nia Fraser. Ken Jeong guessed Kourtney Kardashian, which I thought was a terrible guess because this person sounded much younger than Kourtney Kardashian. Nicole Scherzinger guessed Rebecca Black, who is famously known for singing that song Friday, but I don't think it's her either. And then last but not least, the Rhino, somebody that's tall. He mentioned Jungle Giant. He said Center Stage. There's a Nashville tie in there that I thought was interesting. The Toast of the Town, someone that's hit rock bottom, someone that mentioned a leap of faith, ready to soar again. I thought of Alex Rodriguez as this character because Alex was obviously at rock bottom of his life when he was caught cheating for PEDs with the Yankees. And then he came back to baseball and had a huge part of a surprising season for the Yankees in 2015 where they weren't expected to be good. They made the playoffs and lost to the Astros. And then A-Rod really gained a lot of respect back from fans and from the media after he came back from the suspension. Like, he grew into a different person, into the man who he is today. A-Rod is somebody that I think is big into music. The Center Stage clue, he was always the center of attention, and he was the toast of the town at one point. 2009 Yankees World Series championship, he was the best player on that team, and he helped lead them to a title. Another possibility, I think, is Michael Strahan, Jungle Giant. Obviously, he was a Giants player. He's somebody that went through a hard point in his life after football a little bit. Obviously, he was parted ways with Kelly Ripa before Ryan Seacrest took over. And now he's on Good Morning America with Robin Roberts and GMA3. So he has that going for him, and also he's a part of Fox's NFL coverage. Oh, another thing about A-Rod is that right now he's an employee for Fox for their baseball coverage. Obviously works for ESPN as well. Another possibility here is John Cena. Tim Tebow was Ken Jeong's guess. Jason Aldean was Jenny McCarthy's guess. Nicole Scherzinger's guess, Tim McGraw. And then last but not least, the Swan. There's a lot of hints of ballet. There's a megaphone. There's a hint about refusing to be tuned out. She's somebody that's little. There's ghosts involved, which I don't understand. My guess for this was Gabby Douglas because I've noticed a lot of flexibility with this character. There was a lot of hints about gymnastics and dancing in there. And I could see Gabby doing something like that. She's a really smart and sweet girl, and everybody knows who she is. She's one of the best gymnasts in the world. I won't be surprised if that's her. Ken Jeong guest Nina Dobrev. Nicole Scherzinger guest Jennifer Love Hewitt. And Robin Thicke guest Sarah Michelle Gellar. So that was your Masked Singer recap from last night. And now we'll do Lego Masters very quickly. Interesting show last night. It was a drill where they had to build a bridge, and they it was a part of a build cars in a mini race in the beginning, and then they had to the team that went the furthest are giving more time to design and build a main challenge, and then in the main challenge they are given two existing supports are 6 feet apart, and they had to build a bridge out of Lego to be able to support the most weight as well as able to be aesthetically pleasing. The team that won was Mark and Boone's. That's 3 wins in a row for them. The team that came in second was Tyler and Amy. The 2 teams that were safe were Sam and Jessica and Aaron and Christian. The team at risk was Richard and Flynn. And the team that got eliminated, unfortunately, was Jermaine and Mel. They had a good run the first couple weeks of the show, and then they were at risk last week, and then they lose. So that sucks for them. I think the front runners for this show right now are Mark and Boone. They have the most wins. They were safe the first 3 weeks, and then they're on a 3-game winning streak, or 3-episode winning streak. I think Sam and Jessica could very well be at risk, although they've done better of late. I think Tyler and Amy are candidates to win this show. They won in week 2. Aaron and Christian, I think, another dark horse bet to win the show, but should be interesting. And then next week's show is supposed to be a storybook theme, so that should be very interesting as well. And that's it for today. I'll be back tomorrow talking about more ramifications of the coronavirus, canceling pretty much sports. I'll preview American Idol a little bit tomorrow, and anything else non-coronavirus related in the world of sports and pop culture. I hope you guys have a great night, everybody.